Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here. I got another Master Duel video for you. Coming at you with a deck primer for Mitsurugi Orcust. My combo guide is already out, linked below if you are interested in checking that out and learning the deck sort of play uninterrupted, because these are going to be mostly going second and or hand trap related games. We're going to start with a mirror match here, actually. Another Mitsurugi Orcust player is my opponent. So they're going to lead with Habakiri, and I'm going to chain with the Ash Blossom. A lot of people have asked where to hand trap Mitsurugi, and I do plan on, at some point, ideally making a hand trap video this season for dealing with Mitsurugi as well as everything else. Definitely let me know if you want to see that in the comments, by the way. But I think Ash Blossoming the Habakiri is a great place. I like Ash Blossoming early on because it leaves your opponent with having to have opened other cards that are relevant, right? As opposed to letting them get some searches in and maybe establishing something. And that works out pretty well for me here, although I did have the Dominus Impulse as well in case they had some more plays. So here I'm going to lead with the Mitsurugi Prayers, and my opponent's going to have an Ash Blossom of their own. We do still have some plays here though, because we have the Orcust Harp Horror in hand. That actually by itself is enough to set up an OTK line here, I believe, if I go uninterrupted, but I don't know if I am here. Galatea Eye is going to come down, discarding the Symbol Skeleton to add the World Legacy World Crown. We're going to go for the Orchestrated Babble, summoning the World Crown. That's right, because when I go for Harp Horror, my opponent's going to use a Dominus Impulse of their own. And Harp Horror was really the key to being able to OTK this turn, because that would have summoned Girsu, which would have not only been another body, but also set up the Orcust Nightmare, which could have also set up World Wand to forget another body in my graveyard. So, while I can't OTK, I do know that I'm in a pretty good spot here, because I can still keep link climbing, and my opponent has 3 cards in hand. One of them is a Habakiri, and the other 2 are not plays. Remember as well that Habakiri can only be used once per duel, the effect from hand, right? Because remember, the other effect is the tribute effect. That's whenever this card is tributed, that's once per turn. But revealing this card from the hand, that's a once per duel effect, so you don't have to worry about that again. Even if we did, we do have the Orcust Crescendo, which is a counter Omni-Negate. But at this point now, we can save it for whatever my opponent top decks, if anything. And of course we have in Lil Girsu as well, which can take control of an opponent's monster. Like if they were to go, say, normal summon Harp Horror as their starting play as well. We even have Dominus Impulse to throw down on top of that. Opponent's going to draw for turn, and just concede. Either it seems they didn't top deck anything relevant, or even if they did top deck like Girsu, like the best starter they possibly could, they know I have the face down counter trap, and even if they didn't know that, I also still have the Dominus Impulse. Or even if I didn't have that, rather, I still have the Dominus Impulse. So, alright, that I think is a pretty good first duel there. Let's go ahead and jump into the next one. We're going to get right into it with another going second duel. This one's going to be against Maliss. Yeah, I know the Mitsurugi Ryzeal video was all going first duels. I usually try to avoid that if possible, but decided to throw in some going second games here. We have Imperm and Impulse, which is a pretty good combination to open. This is why I'm on 2 Droll, 2 Imperm. Ideally, I'd like to go 3 of either, especially 3 of Droll. But I decided to hedge on 2 of each because Droll is really impactful in this format, so I wanted more than 1 of that. However, on top of that, the Imperm is super good with Impulse, so I wanted more than 1 of that as well. Because, of course, when you use the Impulse, you can negate and destroy if you have a trap card in the graveyard. So, I think it's important, if you're playing Impulses, to play at least a couple of Imperms, if at all possible. It's something you should go, it's not something you should go like super duper out of your way for, but I try to make room for it whenever I can. So speaking of Imperm, our Girsu's going to get hit with an Imperm. Not ideal, but we can still link it into Galatea Eye, which can then discard the Symbol Skeleton in our hand and then add the World Crown, which can then be specialed and then let us keep link climbing. This is why I think it's really important to be playing World Crown, even if you aren't necessarily going into a combo line that always uses it. Now here I went for Dark, Revived Chesty Cat, and then just straight away linked into Nightmare Phoenix. Huge misplay on my part. I really should have kept the dark around. That way I could have used it for link climbing later in my turn. I'm actually going to kind of run into an issue with this. Kind of? I'll explain when we get there, but either way, I did want to go to Nightmare Mermaid. What I should have done was just use Simple Skeleton to revive Gearsu, then I could have gone Chessie Cat plus Gearsu into Nightmare Phoenix and then Mermaid. Basically doing all this while still having the dark in play. Alright, so there's Gearsu coming down off the Harp Horror. Gonna shuffle back with Galatea to set the Orchestrated Babble. Need to set that here because that's more important than having the Crescendo online. That sounds really weird, but that tends to be true. Having your stuff all be quick effects is just, it's too important. Alright, so Ding is going to send, and my opponent conceded here. However, at this point, I didn't have quite enough bodies to go access code plus Simple Skeleton for the Ding Gears to revive, because I would have had to have used Simple Skeleton to even be able to climb to access code in the first place. So that's really where my misplay kind of came through, and why I really should not have linked away Dark as quickly as I did. But thankfully my opponent conceded, so it really didn't end up mattering here in this particular game. But in the long run, in the grand scheme of things, it really does matter the order that I did it. So anyway, there's that duel. Let's go ahead and jump into the next one here. Okay, this is going to be a really short replay against the Mirror. So another Mitsurugi Orcust. And it's going to be one of those one-turn replays just because I was able to play through a couple of hand traps here. So this opening hand is looking really, really good. We love hands where you open both Habakiri and Gearsu, because you can always, it's like in Mitsurugi Ryzeal, where you open the Habakiri plus Ice Ryzeal. Even if this Habakiri gets hit with like an Ash Blossom or something, you know, you can still always just normal summon Gearsu. But I am going to lead with the Habakiri here. They're going to chain Fuelos. Certainly not ideal, but we can still set up some stuff while giving them minimal draws here. So there goes Saji. Even though it gets tributed, it does still count as a special summon. Saji's going to go for Ritual. And at this point, my opponent throws out a Joel and Lockbird. I guess they figured they were playing against the Ryzeal variant, which is why they Joeled right away. But I think doing that right after the Fuelos is a little bit odd. I'm guessing they either drew the Droll off the Fua, or they drew a starter off the Fua. And so they decided they didn't need the draws anymore. But I can still use the Mitsurugi Ritual here to summon the Habakiri from hand. I was going to do this if I was under the Fuelos anyway, but now, even though I don't get my search, I can still use the Habakiri in hand in order to go for the Ame no Murakumo no Mitsurugi. Following that, we can normal summon Gearsu, and my opponent's about to concede, so I'll just let them do that, I guess. But yeah, we can still send Harp Horror. You know, Harp Horror can still summon from deck. Really, the main thing that Orcust misses out on from the Droll blocking the searches is Galatea Eye, right? Not able to search off that. But I could still set Orchestrated Babble off of the link to Galatea if I wanted. So, I also have the Foolish Burial in hand, which is, of course, very, very good for us here. Yeah, Orcust is actually able to play through Droll fairly well. Again, you miss out on the Galatea Eye search, but other than that, you can still do pretty much whatever you want. So, yeah, very good stuff there. And a lot of the reason why these two engines complement each other. They're not only playing into each other, not only both dark, so you're not worried about the lock, but also if your, you know, Mitsurugi engine gets trolled, you can still do Orcust plays and you're just fine. All right, we have one more duel to finish off with. Let's go into that one. All right, our final opponent here is going to be on Magistus with Mitsurugi. Mitsurugi Magistus. I might actually try this out myself, because I think I have all the cards for it. Maybe barring one or two Magistus extra deck URs. But here we're going to go with for the normal summon Gearsu and get hit with a Maxi. Definitely not ideal. I kind of debated just drolling myself here. And actually, now that I think about it, maybe I should have done that. Because let's see, I would have linked into Galatea Eye. That would have given them a draw. I wouldn't have drolled there because I would have wanted to use Galatea Eye. We could have pitched the Gearsu. Search Babble. And then next time they special, I could droll, give them one draw to go into pretty much full Orcust combo. I wouldn't be able to do Mitsurugi stuff. I don't know, it's debatable. I actually maybe should have gone for it just to see if it was worth doing. But as I lead with Habakiri, I'm going to flip up my Impulse. Oh, by the way, not to pause again, but I wanted to explain real quick. I meant to explain this in the last duel, but this is a good opportunity to explain it as well. If you're in a situation where you have Habakiri plus Girsu, or any Mitsurugi deck where you have Habakiri plus a normal summon, you should always use the Habakiri from hand first. One, it's usually better to start an engine without committing your normal summon, but specifically in the case of Habakiri, Impulse. Impulse can only be used from hand if there's a card in the field, so you want to use Habakiri while you have no cards in the field. Opponent's going to throw out a call by here against my Harpour, which of course not only banishes this copy, but will also stop me from using it on the next turn. But all they have is one face down card, so not much follow-up following the Habakiri getting negated here. Orcust Nightmare isn't a great draw, but it's whatever. I can still use my Girsu effect to make tokens, because that is an activated effect on the field, as long as I control no monster. Then I'm going to turn my token into Galatea Eye, pitching the Orcust Nightmare, and then I can add Orchestrated Babel from deck to hand. It is so nice to have an in-archetype way to get cards out of your hand. Yeah, they're going to draw and Lockbird me here, but I'm just going to... Not only do I have, you know, the Girsu in hand to then send something, but I still, of course, have the Girsu from last turn. So, yeah, I'm pretty sure that was just another full combo, or at the very least, like, access code... That should have been access code lethal line, yeah, even under the draw and Lockbird there. So... This is a lot of the reason why this deck is so good. It tends to play through hand traps a lot better than you might think. Because you don't think of Orcust typically as being able to push through a lot. In Mitsurugi, you see it getting stopped by stuff like Droll. But again, these two just complement each other so well, not only in how they play, but how they're countered leads to the others still being able to play. Alright, there's our games, but I definitely want to talk about this deck. So let's go into a deck breakdown real fast here. Okay, so here is my list for Mitsurugi Orcust. Like I mentioned during the games, I have a 2-2 split between Droll and Imperm, which I normally wouldn't do. Normally, I would go like 3 of one and 1 of the other to have the, you know, one of as a crossout target. But again, I think Droll and Lockbird is really good in this format, so I want more than one copy against like other Mitsurugi decks, and especially Mitsurugi Raizio. But at the same time, I do think it is important to have Imperm and Impulse. Like, to have, you know, multiple copies of Imperm with Impulse so that this Destroy effect is live a little bit more often. But, yeah, I mean, otherwise, it's a lot of what you'd expect to see as far as, like, your one-ofs for each engine. Our 3-ofs are, of course, Girsu and Habakiri, our main starters. Prayers to search Habakiri. And then we have Harpour, which isn't as good as opening Girsu, but is still actually one-card combo, thanks to Galatea Eye. Honestly, Orcust needed just literally any Link 1 with Orcust in its name, so that Orcust Harpour was actually a one-card combo. But the fact that Galatea Eye is, well, good, that is, of course, a huge bonus. Oh, speaking of the one-ofs for each engine, you'll notice that for the Mitsurugi stuff, we're actually not playing... Oops. I'll go ahead and show you the card here. We're not playing Night Sword Serpent. So this card that you see in pretty much every other Mitsurugi build. The reason we're not playing it is because it is water. And of course, using Orcust effects will lock you into dark. So we do, of course, do some lines where we do Mitsurugi stuff. Like, of course, if you open Habakiri, you're going to do Mitsurugi stuff before you do Orcust stuff. So, I don't know. I guess if you really wanted to, you could still play Night Sword Serpent for those situations. But I personally think that's really greedy. I would just not play it. You don't need it anyway. You get enough bodies out to still do your main combo with just doing, you know, Mitsurugi stuff. World Crown, as mentioned during gameplay, I do think is important, even if you're not always using it in your turn 1 combo line. In fact, you typically don't, but it's still good to have an optional extender. Like, if you get hand trapped, for example, if your Girsu gets negated and you need an extra body after you link into Galatea Eye, you can search up the World Crown and still go into plays. Let's see. Yeah, I don't know. I think the rest of this deck is fairly self-explanatory as far as, like, the main and honestly the extra deck goes. Nightmare Mermaid, of course, is legal in Master Duel only and is huge. It is the reason that you're able to guaranteed go Mitsurugi into Orcust plays. Again, check out the combo guide linked down below to see how you do that. But yeah, even though we didn't summon any of the games in this, in this video, This is still definitely a very important piece of the puzzle here. I think there is a little bit of flex room in the extra deck here. Like, Dynamundo, I think, is honestly, in the grand scheme of things, pretty optional. You still like having the option to go into it for the Mitsurugi stuff, but it is fairly optional. Second Galatea is always nice to have in Orcust, but you really don't need it. You can definitely get away with one for sure. Honestly, and this is going to sound crazy, but even Appaloosa, I think this card is extremely optional in this deck. This really only ever gets made off of IP Masquerena. Like, maybe if you have a hand where you open Habakiri and Girsu and, like, another extender on top of that, then you could make, like, an Appaloosa before you really pop off and, you know, lock yourself into Dark. But that Dark Lock is going to come up most turns, even during your opponents. If you're using, for example, like, you know, Symbol Skeleton to revive the Ding during your opponent's turn, you're going to have to, if you want to go IP into Appaloosa, you'll have to do that before you activate Symbol Skeleton, and you don't always have that luxury. So, sounds weird, but I think in the Mitsurugi Orcust build, Appaloosa is optional. In the pure build, you do make this on turn 1. Again, that combo guide is also featured, or that line is also featured in my combo guide. But, yeah, for this build, you don't really ever make this that often at all. But yeah, I think that covers pretty much everything I wanted to talk about as far as this deck. Definitely let me know, as always, what you think in the comments below. And thank you, of course, as always, for watching. I super appreciate you taking the time out to do that. But yeah, that'll do it for now. Let's go ahead and thank YouTube members and patrons by moving on to our outro. Hey everybody, Hexlex here. Thank you so very much for watching all the way to the very end of the video, which, by the way, is one of the best ways to support the channel. Speaking of supporting the channel, take a look at the names on screen. These are folks who have been so generous as to either join as a YouTube member or subscribe over on patreon.com/Hexlex to support. There's also perks for doing so. If you would like to see YouTube videos early, as well as some exclusive videos that get uploaded to YouTube, but for one reason or another I decide not to publish, definitely go ahead and hit that join button to see content early, as well as some exclusive content. If you're looking for more exclusive content, over on patreon.com, I upload exclusive videos that are not posted on YouTube just about every single day. Whether you choose to subscribe over on Patreon, join as a YouTube member, or simply continue to watch, your support is greatly appreciated. Thank you so very much. But for now, this is Hexlex. I am signing out, and I hope that you have a fantastic day.